Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Asus Zenbook Pro 14 OLED. This is actually a very powerful but lightweight and compact Windows laptop, and this is running with an RTX 4070 GPU and an i9 processor from Intel, yet it comes in at about 3.5 pounds. And if you're somebody that's doing a lot of creative work on the go, this might be a nice machine to throw in your bag because it doesn't compromise much. It's also powerful enough to play games, but it is a little power constrained on those, and we'll talk about that as we work our way through the review here. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that this is on loan from Asus, and we're done with this. It goes back to them. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what you can do with this very powerful and compact laptop. Now, the price point on this comes in at $17.99, but it escalates up from there. This one being fully decked out, I estimate coming in at around $2,300, give or take. But all of them have a nice 14.5-inch display, an OLED display, which looks spectacular. You've got nice deep blacks thanks to the OLED technology, superb viewing angles as you can see here. What's nice also is that the display is tailored towards creators, so it meets 100% of the DCI P3 color range there. It is Pantone certified. It supports HDR. It goes up to 550 nits of peak brightness, so not as bright as your phone or your television might be, but you can do some HDR work on this one. It has stylus support, believe it or not, but the display doesn't go down farther than here, so it's probably not all that practical to use a stylus, but it is touch-enabled here, so if you like touching your screen, you'll be able to do that, although it does attract fingerprints here on the display. What I also like about it is that it runs at 120 Hertz with a 0.2 millisecond response rate. So everything is super snappy and responsive here, and there's barely any noticeable motion blur on screen. So that's great for video editing, for photo editing when you're moving stuff around, but also for games that you might want to play on this too. It's a really, really nice display. But that does, of course, eat into the battery life a bit on this, which we'll get to in a minute. Now, this one is equipped with an Intel i9-13900H processor. It also has an RTX 4070 GPU with 8 gigabytes of onboard video memory. So that's going to be great for doing video work, even live video work. But the GPU is only running at 85 watts, so that will impact performance a bit, as you'll see on some of the benchmarks we'll cover in a few minutes. The entry-level model has a 4060 GPU, likely running at a similar wattage. This unit is decked out on RAM with 48 gigabytes, but 16 gigabytes of that is soldered onto the main board, and they have one additional SO-DIMM slot on the motherboard that you can use for putting additional RAM on. So if you get a 16 gigabyte unit, you've got a single channel memory there. You add another stick and you'll get up to dual channel. This one with the 48 has both the internal RAM obviously occupied along with that SO-DIMM slot. This one has a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD on board, and of course you can choose whichever storage size meets your needs, and you can upgrade that storage later. Just note, though, that there's only room inside for one NVMe slot, so you can only have one internal hard drive on this one. Larger gaming laptops usually allow for more. But that said, I really like how small and powerful this thing is. It comes in at just 3.5 pounds or 1.5 kilograms. It is super portable, as you can see, and it's really nice to have a PC with this much horsepower at your disposal that's also so portable. So it's really not going to weigh you down as you're traveling like a larger gaming laptop might. As for ports, there's not as many as I would like. You've got your power port over here. One thing that I found of interest here is how small the power adapter is. This is a 200-watt power supply, but it's smaller than some power supplies that I've seen on gaming laptops that deliver less power. So the compactness also carries forward to the power supply here. You do need to use that power supply to get the most power out of it, because Thunderbolt and USB-C can't provide enough power to give you the CPU and GPU power that this thing requires. You also have an HDMI output here. You have a USB-A port, a headphone microphone jack over here, and then on the other side you have an SD 4.0 card reader slot. Unfortunately, though, the cards stick out, as you can see here, so you won't be carrying your card around as augmented storage if you're trying to go portable. There are two USB-C ports on here. Unfortunately, only one of them is Thunderbolt. The other one is just USB-C. Both, though, are full service ports, so you can do power delivery, although, again, you won't get the full power out of the laptop. And these will also do video out and, of course, support data devices. But for the price point here, I think having two Thunderbolt ports would have been much better, especially if you're doing live video production and you want to plug in a Thunderbolt box for video capture or something along those lines. So you are a little more limited on ports here. That is it. There's no Ethernet port on this either, so you're going to have to bring that along with you too. But it is super portable and super powerful. Now the build quality on this feels quite nice. It's all metal. It's got a nice rigid, sturdy feel, very solid feeling as you're walking around with it. I also like the fact that it's very well balanced, so you can pick the display lid up here and not have the keyboard come up with you. The keyboard is very nice as well. It is backlit. The keys are well spaced. They've got a lot of nice deep travel on them too, so it feels good. You get a good tactile response on the keyboard. And given that this laptop is a little thicker perhaps than your average run-of-the-mill Ultrabook, they're making good use of that extra space to give you a more comfortable typing surface. So the keyboard gets 2 thumbs up in my book here. The trackpad is also very nice, and it's got some neat features to it, or at least one neat feature. So as trackpads go, it tracks just fine. I found it to have a good feel to it. This is a physical click pad, so it will actually click down when you push it. It's not one of those haptic-only deals. But you'll see here, it's got a little dial, and right now it's disabled, so as I move my finger around the keyboard here, it just works normally. But if I swipe down, it will light up, and when it lights up, it goes into this Dialpad mode. And what you can do in certain applications that you configure for it is use it perhaps like a shuttle dial in a video editing application like I'm using here. Right now I've got it set to go frame by frame, and different applications can be set to do different things. When you're on the desktop, you can have it set the volume control. And you'll find that the dial supports a lot of applications right out of the gate. So for example, DaVinci Resolve here just got detected automatically, and it gave me some options for using it. I would, though, like to see some additional features added to this feature. One would be to detect acceleration. So right now I'm just going frame by frame no matter how fast I spin the wheel here. It'd be nice if it would maybe accelerate the scrubbing here as I accelerate my finger movement. And I think also having some haptic feedback would really help here too, just to give it a little bit more granularity to its feel. But I like the idea here quite a bit, and I think you can come up with a lot of unique ways to use this feature, and you can go in and configure what it does inside of the Asus Creator Hub, which I'll show you in a minute. Now at the top you have a 1080p webcam that will shoot video at 30 frames per second. It's probably fine for doing Zoom calls, but not so great for video production work, so just be aware of that. The camera, of course, is located right here at the top. One thing to note is that if you got some fingerprints up here, it will cloud up the lens. So you're going to want to keep that area clean to get the clearest image possible out of it. The speakers are pretty nice on this. They've got a good deep bass to them, at least for laptop speakers, and I found music to sound really nice on here. Spoken word and conference calls also sound nice too. Very loud, and it does apparently support Dolby Atmos for applications that support that. Now in my testing, all the basic things that you might do with your laptop day to day are going to perform exceptionally well on this laptop as expected. So you can see Google Chrome just kind of springs to life here, and websites just spring up as well. This does have Wi-Fi 6E on board. We are connected to my Wi-Fi 6 network right now, but this is the kind of performance you can expect. No lag on any kind of day-to-day work that you might be doing with it. That includes, of course, Microsoft Office and PowerPoint and all of that stuff. Now, if you're doing that basic task, you should get about 6 to 8 hours out of the battery, provided you've got that GPU turned off. And there's ways to manage the power on this that I'll show you in a minute. But if you are using the GPU and editing video or playing games, that battery life is going to be reduced significantly. Additionally, the display will draw a good amount of power too. So when it's in its 120 Hertz mode and you've got it at full brightness, that's going to eat the battery away pretty quickly. So you want to turn that display brightness down. Make sure you're in 60 Hertz mode. Stick to just the Intel CPU with its onboard graphics, and you'll get, maybe a portion of the workday out of it on battery. But the second you start using it for its design purpose, that's going to chew up battery life significantly more. So keep that power supply handy. You're going to need it. But more demanding tasks also perform quite well on here. So I've got DaVinci Resolve running with a 4K 60 video project. If I go up here and grab a cross dissolve and drop that onto the timeline, what you'll see here is that there's not much of a lag in getting that rendered. It just kind of renders it out in real time. Some of the other ones will take a little bit to render, but not all that long. So for example, I just dropped Tunnel of Light on there, and if I just run the cursor back here, you can see that that renders out pretty quickly too. So if you're doing a lot of color correction and other higher end type of editing like After Effects, having the 4070 on this one like we have, I think is going to provide a nice boost in power, especially for something that's this compact. Now I was also curious to see how well this would do as a live video production machine. And so I installed vMix on it, which is the same software that I run on my beefy desktop here to produce video on the channel. And what we've got running in here right now are 5 4K videos. We've got 4 in the boxes here and then 1 running in the background. And you can see the output of that here. So what's happening right now is that this laptop is rendering all this up in real time and pushing it out over the network. And I'm streaming this over to my other vMix machine that I'm producing this video on right now. And as you can see here, everything is running very, very smoothly. And the system is not all that taxed here either. In fact, I can bring in another 4K 30 source. I've got it smaller here just so I can put it on top of everything else. But here you go. We are streaming live from the laptop with now 6 4K 30 video sources. And the laptop here is able to keep up with all of it. If I pull up the task manager here and look at the performance section, what you will see on screen is that our CPU is running at about 50% utilization, so we still have some room to go on that. And the GPU here is running at only 30%, at least for its 3D rendering, so we still have some room on the GPU to add more video sources before we totally tax this thing out. So a lot of power baked into this for doing live streaming. And again, we're doing 4K right now on all of our video sources. So if you were running at a lower resolution like a 1080p stream, I think this will do very, very well at that. You could probably get 8, 10, maybe even more video sources coming in. The only challenge, of course, is that you have a lack of Thunderbolt ports on this. So typically what I do out in the field is I have a Thunderbolt box that I plug a video capture card into that can bring in 4 video sources simultaneously. Here, with only a single Thunderbolt port, you're a little more limited, especially because you don't have Ethernet built in. So NDI is another way that I bring video in over the network, and you're going to have to figure out a way to work with the port constraints here. But overall, from a production standpoint, insofar as performance is concerned, this works very, very well. So let's take a look at some gaming now. We'll start off with Apex Legends. Here we were running at the native resolution of the display at 2880 by 1800, and we were set to the highest settings and getting between 120 and 144 frames per second. So you can definitely make use of that 120 hertz display. And take a look at how good this looks. Jake is shooting the screen with his phone, and it almost looks like a direct capture. That's how nice the display is on this one. Now, I do want to point out here, though, that the display doesn't support NVIDIA G-Sync, which is a feature that you see on gaming laptops that helps smooth out the frame rates when you are seeing variabilities in performance. This doesn't support that, so you won't get some of the benefit of that feature, but the games will look great on the OLED here. This is Fortnite, also running at the native resolution of the display. We have this one set to epic settings, and we're getting between 40 and 55 frames per second. So not quite 60 at that resolution and setting level, but of course you could get there if you make some adjustments to it. And we also took a look at No Man's Sky on a live stream the other day. There, native resolution running at ultra settings. We were getting between 45 and 50 frames per second. It looked and played pretty nice there. Red Dead Redemption 2, again, also native resolution, medium settings, getting between 40 and 45 frames per second. Now I'm going to put some benchmarks up on screen and compare this laptop to a Lenovo gaming laptop that we got in and I'll be reviewing shortly. And you're going to see some performance differences there, but there's a reason for it. So let's pull up the 3D Mark TimeSpy benchmark first. And there you can see we got a very nice score here of 11,371. But you'll notice that that Legion 5 with a 4060 was doing better graphically. And that's because, at least according to the driver on the Asus here, we're only using about 85 watts of power on that GPU, whereas the Lenovo is running its GPU at 140 watts. So some laptops that can pump a little bit more power into that GPU are going to do better. And that's why on this 4070, we're getting the same score as a 4060 on another laptop. It's all about the power level here. And on the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme benchmark test, I got a score of 20,267. That is very close to the score I got out of last year's MacBook Pro 14 with the M1 Max. And I think the M2 Max will be very close to this Zenbook insofar as that benchmark is concerned. And what that tells me is that if you are running applications that are on both platforms, the performance is going to be very similar between this and a MacBook Pro. And the price is pretty similar too, depending on how you configure things. So if you were looking for something with better battery life and a quieter fan, that MacBook might be worth considering, especially if the price for that one is getting close to what you're seeing on the Zenbook here. But it's really up to you to decide which operating system is best. But I was surprised to see that the MacBooks really hold their own against a pretty beefy set of hardware here. And on the 3D Mark stress test, we got a passing grade of 99.7%. That tells me that the laptop's performance is going to be consistent under heavy load. And I saw that consistency playing the games, but also when we were testing with vMix a little bit earlier. And that's really important if you are depending on this machine's performance to survive a 2-hour live stream, for example. And that's also why the GPU is running at 85 watts, because it's always a balancing act to get the best performance you can while also making sure you don't overheat the laptop. And the smaller you get, the harder it is to keep things cool. So it was nice to see that things are running here very consistently. But the fan noise on this one is quite loud when it's under that heavy sustained load. If you're just sitting at idle, it's fine. But when you're really pushing it, like when we did the vMix demonstration a little bit earlier, those fans are very loud and very audible. They also have an application here called Creator Hub where you can adjust some of the performance settings. So for example, we can go back to the front screen here and set some profiles. They have a whisper mode where the fan is pretty much non-existent, but that also impacts performance. You can also set it to standard and performance here. And of course, you can also go in and disable or enable the built-in Intel GPU and have the NVIDIA GPU only kick on when necessary. For our testing, we've been running it with the NVIDIA GPU enabled at all times just to get the best performance out of it, but you do have the ability to adjust for those things. You also in here can set what that dial control does. So you can get that all wired in here and adjust whatever settings you need to get it working the way you want. And they have some other features here like some optimization on a per application basis. And you also have the ability to do some color calibration on the display all through their Creator Hub app here. Now I did try to boot up Ubuntu like we always do here when we're looking at laptops, and unfortunately this was about as far as I could get. It keeps reporting an unknown chipset and canceling out on me, so I think at some point when we get a Linux update, we might see some more operating systems you can boot on this, but at the moment, it looks like I'm going to recommend this one for Windows only. So fan noise aside, I really like this machine quite a bit. I'm a sucker for really small and compact yet powerful computers, and this one kind of fits the bill. It is very portable. It's not all that heavy. You got a really nice GPU and CPU on here. And if you're doing a lot of live video production work like I do from time to time out in the field, this is a great choice because it can really handle quite a bit, yet not weight you down with a lot of gear. So I think if you're looking for something small and powerful with a nice display, this will certainly do it for you. I would say gaming is kind of maybe a secondary activity on here. Creative work, I think, is front and center. That's how they're marketing this as well, but it does very nice with both, and you really can't beat the quality of the display here. That's going to do it for this look at the Asus Zenbook Pro 14 OLED. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Brian Parker, Chris Allegretta, Hot Sauce and Video Games, Logic KGR, Tom Albrecht, and Amda Brown. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.